which was an application to Congress for a convention of states under Article V of the U.S. Constitution. The underlying issues that led the legislature to pass SGR 2, imposing fiscal restraints on the federal government, limiting the power and jurisdiction of the federal government, and limiting the terms of office of federal officials and members of Congress, are just as pressing today as they were in 2017. SGR 2 was accompanied by SGR 38, which contained a sunset provision that will automatically rescind unless extended by the state's application to Congress for a convention of states on May 11th of this year. SGR 54 is that application to renew our call for a convention of states to continue our continued call extending beyond the 8-year mark. So SGR 54 is an application on behalf of the 89th legislature for the Article V convention for those same three purposes. The substance of this call and the call in 17 are exactly the same, only the dates of asking for the call again, except without a sunset provision. So members, what this means is that unless rescinded by a succeeding legislature, this SJR, if approved, unless rescinded by a succeeding legislature, the application proposed by SJR 54 would constitute a continuing application in accordance with Article V until at least 2/3 of the state legislatures have submitted substantively similar applications and the Congress notifies and calls the convention. With that, subject to your approval and questions.
Thank you, Senator Birdwell. And so, as I recall back in 2017, at that time, Texas had a number of loose calls out there, and we recalled everyone except for the balanced budget amendment. Is that correct?
Correct. One of the, there were, without giving you too filibustery an answer, there were 3 bills that I did sequentially that day in 2017. The first bill was a rescission of all previous calls except the balanced budget amendment. That one has, I think, just over 20 states, and we wanted our call for that to be, because it, while it's not exactly the same as fiscal restraints, it is within that subset, so we wanted to keep that
yes, sir.
Present. The next bill was the faithful delegate one that talked about the processes, because, Mr. Chairman, there were some folks that were like, why do we need this? And I said, well, in the Constitution, the reason the Congress calls the convention, because at the adoption of the Constitution, the methodology for notification to states was horseback, buggy, et cetera. And if you're one of the states, because it takes 34 states to call the convention, right now with 50 in the union, what if you're one of the 16 that didn't call for it? So if Texas had been a state that a future convention gets called, but we weren't one of the applicants, we've got to make sure we're ready for those delegates to go, even if we weren't. So that's why we did the faithful delegate bill, to put the procedures in place for how each chamber would choose, and based upon the guidance we got from Congress as how many delegates from each state, et cetera. And then we did the actual call, which has the substance, which is again reiterated here in its exact verbiage.
Good. So, thank you for that. I couldn't recall exactly how we done that. Thank you. Any questions for the author? Well, we'll open testimony on SJR 54. The chair calls James Quintero, Cindy Castilla, Ken Moore, Fred Costa. Again, looks like we have Mr. Quintero. I see Mr. Moore coming. We're looking for Cindy Castilla. Dr. Fred Costa. Come on now, please have a seat. Is what chair calls Roger Abshire. Come on down, have a seat. Still looking for Cindy Castilla. Is Miss Castilla here? All right, we'll go with this panel, and then we'll, if anyone else wishes to testify on, for, or against SJR 54, make sure you've registered electronically, or come down and see our clerk at the table. Welcome. We'll start over here on my left, your right. Introduce yourself. Now, when you're on the end, you got to get close to the microphone.
Okay, fair
Introduce yourself and go ahead. Welcome.
I'm Dr. Roger Abshire. I am a member of the political science faculty at Texas University. I'm here testifying on the SJR 54. I'm not going to belabor anything. I know I have limited time, but I just want to kind of make a couple of points on the issue. The first is that it is, I think, constitutionally questionable whether state legislatures or Congress, for that matter, actually have the authority to call limited conventions like this. Nothing in the text says anything about this. There's no precedent for any prior convention being called in this manner. And that, I think, to a certain extent, the kind of practice of doing this has actually made it easier for Congress to ignore these kinds of calls and these kinds of applications in the past. And that if states are really serious about this path of Article 5, they ought to consider some applications that are without limitations and that don't have a lot of provisos. And I'll leave it there, and I'll welcome questions.
And thanks, Professor. And I've just got a question, and other members may as well. And so, with regard to the legislature's authority, so under the Constitution, so a call coming from the state, would that come from would the state call a convention to issue a call, or if not from the legislature, where would what mechanism would a state use to call for a convention? And that's not I'm not cross-examining. I want to understand what you think about that.
The call would come from the state legislature, and that's what Article 5 says. I suppose my point of, constitutional contention here is that there's nothing in Article 5 that says that states can call for conventions with limitations or for certain purposes.
I see. Got it.
This has been a very common practice among states, including Texas. But even now, Congress recognizes 36 applications. They don't match, and so Congress doesn't count them as 36 applications. They count them as separate clusters of applications. And I think to a certain extent, so long as states keep passing applications that are variable, Congress is going to continue to do what it has done, which is ignore them, in part because most of these applications are calling for constitutional change that would limit Congress's authority. And the whole point of the convention process is to cut Congress out. And states are making it really easy for Congress to not cut itself out by passing applications that are very different.
I see what you mean. So the question is not whether a state can call for a convention, but whether it can call for a convention and in that call limit the scope, and the age-old debate among conservative and liberals for that matter. Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure I understood that.
May I respond, Mr. Chairman?
Please, Mr. Chairman.
The gentleman answered the question actually in his answer to you. There are 19, Texas was the 11th state, but there are 19 states that have used this exact language. The reason we use this language, each state has the ability to control its delegates. And that's what we did with that faithful delegate bill. The reason that the states are using this exact same language is so that the Congress doesn't use, well, you called for A, B, and C. This next state calls for A and C. Another state calls for A and D. And because even if everybody called for the exact same A, because the calls were different, the requests were different, the Congress will treat them as separate. So by having a standardized call and then each state controlling its delegates, while the Constitution doesn't say you can control a convention, it doesn't say that you can't. And then the other point I would make is the 9th and 10th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution are designed to control the Congress. That's part of the problem and why the states want to reassert themselves as the originating body and discharger and creator of the federal government. The states created the federal government, and remember, the creation is never greater than the creator.
Well said.
So when each state joins the union after the original 13, each state that joins the union becomes an heir to that same structure. There are 50 stars on the flag. There are not 13 big ones and 37 little ones because the additional states have lesser substantive rigor than the original 13.
That's good.
We all sign up and ratify for the same document. Therefore, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, therefore, what we do here is make the call uniform so that the Congress has no ability to legitimately refuse the states if we get to 34 with the exact same call in their uniformity. The Congress can't say, well, there were enough differences that we can play stump the chump with the states. Okay? So that's regardless, why we keep it the way we did. And then each state can control its delegates the way it wishes to do, like the way Texas did. Because ultimately, the only way to get the federal government back inside the box that it ought to belong in is for the creator to adjust the creation's status.
Well said. Well said. Ms.
Thank you,
Castillo,
Mr. Chairman.
thank you. Ms. Castillo, come on down. We have a seat for you. Come on down. Welcome. And Mr. Quintero, you're recognized. Go ahead.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, members, my name is James Quintero. I represent the Texas Public Policy Foundation. I want to thank you for the opportunity to address the body today in support of SJR 54. Even with a new administration in place, the national government today is a leviathan whose power and control exceed anything ever imagined by the framers of the Constitution. As its reach has grown, individual liberty and the rule of law have been trampled underfoot. With perhaps a little bit of exception granted to President Trump, Washington, D.C. policymakers have proven themselves unable to resist the siren song of big government. What is left then under the Constitution is for the states to employ an Article V call for a convention of the states to propose amendments to reverse our decline and rein in our out-of-control national government. The framers gave us this tool as a means to responsibly curb the ambitions of federal excess. We should utilize it to press for a reconfiguration of the federal government in a manner that is consistent with liberty and limited government. By passing this resolution today, we can send a clear message to Washington that the time has come for reform. So let's take this step and through our actions, encourage other states to follow our lead. I want to thank you for your time and I look forward to any questions.
Thanks for your testimony. Ms. Castillo, welcome. Introduce yourself and go ahead.
Okay. Hi, Cindy Castilla, Texas Eagle Forum. We're opposed to SJR 54. Republicans are truly divided on this issue, so I'm speaking mostly to our Republicans here. The discussions are always robust and both sides clearly love our country. But I served on the RPT Platform Committee in 2022 and 2024 at both conventions, and actually in 2020 as well. The COS plank was pulled, put back, and pulled again, or vice versa. Each vote was 15 to 16 or 16 to 15. A minority report has been presented for one side or the other at our last 3 consecutive state conventions. Last year, when delegates voted on the individual planks, 51% of those in attendance voted against the COS plank. When that vote was adjusted to a voting strength percentage, the plank barely passed and had the lowest approval rate of all 252 planks. The half of the Republicans who oppose the COS do so for very different reasons than the Democrats oppose holding one. Earlier this session, this committee discussed delegate behavior at length when hearing SB 1187. You had valid concerns about delegate behavior. In reality, Congress would likely set the rules regarding delegate selection, and the rules set by states would be null. You expressed concern about the faithfulness of Texas delegates, but are you not also concerned about who other states would send, no matter how the selection is prescribed? I think of delegates from California, Colorado, New York, Illinois, and Massachusetts, just to start. among many other states that I'd be concerned. I cannot suppose there will be agreement on much. Proponents want to believe that everyone who is sent will be a like-minded patriot. But if that were true, why aren't these states sending the same great non-compromising patriots to Congress already? If a balanced budget amendment is passed in our elected Congress at the time of passage accomplishes that through additional taxes or even asset confiscation, that would not have been what we wanted. We want them to cut spending. We need to send people to Congress who will cut spending. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Mr. Moore, welcome. Introduce yourself. Go ahead.
My name is Ken Moore. I am for this SJR, and I'm representing myself. One of the arguments that keeps coming up, and I think my friend here is hinting at it, is the idea of a runaway convention where you send who knows to this convention, and yeah, they may have a limited mandate, but once they're there, who's to stop them from going forward and doing whatever? I would point out the fact that you senators collectively understand better than most how hard it is to get something through both chambers and to the governor's desk, even in a good session, no matter how clear and how necessary the bill may be. If the worst comes to pass and the convention, the delegates at the convention do go wild and they start adding things that no one ever anticipated, no one ever wanted, first off, that's not the end of the story. It has to come back to the states for ratification. I'm guessing that when it comes back to the Texas delegates, send theirs back, it'll probably come through this very committee. Are you going to vote for a convention, an amendment to say give DC statehood? Are you going to vote for something that says, oh, I don't know, we're going to outlaw poultry, pork, and beef, and force everyone to eat this grown beef? I don't think so. And as hard as it is to get even a good bill, it's going to stop here. And then going further, if Texas is not on board, it's doubtful the other states will pull enough votes to get the thing ratified. And so there are a lot of filters in place that'll keep this thing from going berserk.
And thanks for your testimony. Dr. Costa, get close to that microphone, introduce yourself, and go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, you haven't answered the delicate question that's still outstanding. 10 states in the past 9 years have rescinded all their Article V convention applications. Glenn Beck reversed his support of COS, saying, "We are not the people to open up this sacred document. It's not a legislative priority. It's not about term limits. It's not about a balanced budget. It's about a dangerous Article V convention that would end our constitutional republic." An Article V convention has never happened in this country. However, modern-day, real-world Article V conventions were convened in Venezuela and Chile, whose constitutions were modeled after ours. Hugo Chavez used an Article V convention to turn Venezuela into a Marxist dictatorship. Convention promoters are using the specter of an out-of-control federal government, which is now being brought to heel, for the false dichotomy of either an out-of-control federal government or a convention. Convention promoters tell you they want a limited convention, but they tell Congress they want an unlimited convention. HCR 15 in the 119th Congress demands Congress retroactively call an unlimited convention with the claim the 34-state threshold has been reached in 1979 by counting all non-rescinded, outdated, plenary, and unrelated applications, thus getting around the problem that a lot of states have rescinded their applications. In our last legislative session, the COS resolution to extend the sunset was stopped by a point of order. God does intervene in the affairs of men. Our powerful friend once again intervened on our behalf with the Constitution. For all 27 amendments, states and Congress have rejected a dangerous Article V convention. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. Senators, any questions for any of our witnesses? We thank each of you for being here. Thanks for your testimony. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on, for, or against SJR 54. We have John Van Kamp. And so, Mr. Van Kampen, welcome. Get situated there. Introduce yourself and give us your testimony.
My name is John Van Kampen. I'm the legislative liaison for Convention of States. I'm going to take a different tact and level this up a step. And Senator Birdwell, I really appreciate your explanation of where this falls in the grand scheme of things and why we need a consistent application. One of the things the opponents haven't brought up this time that they usually bring up is that in Federalist 85, Hamilton doesn't want to have another convention. And the part they leave out of that is that he doesn't want to have another constitutional convention like 1787. He goes on in the third to the last, I believe maybe second to the last paragraph of Federalist 85 to say he doesn't believe the federal government will ever be in a position of overreach. But in the case he's wrong, the state legislatures are always there to erect a bulwark to protect the citizens against an overreaching federal government. That bulwark, he asserts, is the 5th article, wherein the Congress and the federal government have no latitude to do anything but. I would suggest that Hamilton laid the responsibility on state legislatures to stop an overreaching federal government. That responsibility has not waned in 250 years, not one bit. Setting a sunset on the first call made it sound like perhaps it did wane. It does not wane. The responsibility of state legislatures to protect their people from an overreaching federal government through whatever means, whether you like the word nullification or not, whether you like let's send better people to Congress or not, or whether you like Article 5 or not, every single method to protect citizens from an overreaching federal government should be used and does not expire, not in 250 years, let alone 8 years. Thank you.
Thanks for your testimony. Senators, any questions for Mr. Van Kampen?
Thank you.
Thanks for your testimony. And the chair calls Steve Oglesby. And if there's anyone else wishing to testify on, for, or against SJR 54, you can make yourself known. Mr. Oglesby, welcome.
Thank you.
I'll note that Mr. Van Kampen and Mr. Oglesby both traveled here from Northeast Texas in beautiful Senate District 1. Welcome. Introduce yourself. Give us your testimony.
I'm Steve Oglesby, and I represent myself and the John Birch Society. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to us. It's kind of important to us. I am against a new application. I'm especially against a new application that doesn't have an expiration date. One of the things our Constitution guarantees us is a Republican form of government, which means not R's and D's, but that we are entitled to speak to our representatives and have them do things for us. And that's an ongoing process, right? That's why we have, ongoing legislative sessions. By making it permanent, we eliminate that right from any future Texans who don't like the idea of a convention of states, an Article V convention. It leaves them without any recourse. If something comes up and they realize, man, this is not what we want to do right now, they have no way to do anything about it. So I would say that might be a little bit unconstitutional. And then if it's going to be, according to the Constitution, a convention to propose amendments. And while these sound amazing, and we already have most of them, right? We have term limits because they're elections. I'll go to the rest of them if you like. But if we, sorry, I lost my train of thought for a second. I got excited. Where was I? But it was good. Were you listening?
You said term limits.
Yeah, term limits, all that kind of stuff too. I'm sorry, I just ran in here. I got here a little bit late. The point is, these are all things that are happening right now. We don't need to do this now, but if we have a convention, New York is going to propose amendments too. California is going to propose amendments too. We have no control over other states. That's where I was going with that.
Thanks for your testimony.
Yeah.
Sir, if there's any questions for Mr. Oglesby? Hey, thanks for being here. Thank you very much. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on, for, or against an adjourned resolution 54? Seeing and hearing none, public testimony is closed, and the resolution is left pending at this time. So that will allow our Senate team time to rearrange the furniture. We will be in recess here in just a moment, and we'll be coming back after the floor session today. So if there's no other business at this time, the Senate Committee on...
Well, folks, you have been watching the Texas Senate Committee on State Affairs hear public testimony on our Article V application titled SJR 54. As a reminder, our original Texas application passed in 2017 is set to expire next month due to a sunset clause on that original resolution. SJR 54 is a clean version of the resolution with no sunset clause. So if it passes, this application will be valid unless or until some future legislature takes action to rescind it. Of course, that's what we want. We did not have a vote in this committee today, but of course we were expecting that. They will come back later for the vote. And let me just give you a quick recap of what just happened. Senator Brian Birdwell, our Senate sponsor, introduced the resolution. Senator Birdwell's a longtime supporter of Convention of States going way back. So he's been a friend to the organization for a long time, did a great job introducing our resolution and sort of explaining the need for it. I was really excited to see Texas Public Policy Foundation send a spokesperson to share their endorsement and support of Convention of States. In case you don't know, Texas Public Policy Foundation is a giant in Texas politics and gave great testimony in support. The gentleman said, DC policymakers have proven themselves unable to resist the siren song of big government. Isn't that the truth? He said Convention of States is needed to curb the ambitions of federal excess. So loved his comments there. We did have some opponents testify. Most notably probably was the representative from Texas Eagle Forum. Thought it was really interesting. She wanted to talk all about party platforms and party politics, what the Republican Party of Texas has done or not done with relation to Convention of States. But folks, this isn't a party thing. This is an American thing. It's for the good of all Americans. It's not just about a party and certainly what a particular state's party thinks of it and whether they pass a plank in support of it or not. So I thought it was a little bit of wasted time on her part. She also mentioned that she's afraid of the delegates from California and from New York. But frankly, that just shows that she doesn't have a really good understanding of how the process works, because we know at a Convention of States, voting is on the basis of one vote per state. So California might send as many delegates as they want to, but they will have one vote when it comes to deciding whether to pass proposed amendments on to the ratification stage. They have the same voting power as Montana and Wyoming, which is frankly one of the great things about this process. So it was interesting to see. There were a couple of other opponents. One of them questioned the power of the states to limit the scope of an Article V convention. What was really interesting is that he went on to disprove his own concern, because then he talked about the fact that when Congress receives applications for a convention of states, it doesn't aggregate them all together, but it aggregates them based on the topic expressed in each one. So, for instance, you may know that the Convention of States project, we have 19 pending applications. 19 states have passed applications for a convention to propose amendments that would impose fiscal restraints on the federal government, limit its power and jurisdiction, and set term limits for federal officials. And those applications get aggregated together because they're on the same topic. So it was a little bit funny to see him kind of disprove his own concern by explaining that Congress certainly believes the subject matter of the applications matter. And of course, why wouldn't they? Why would the founders give the states the power to apply for an Article V convention to propose amendments, but not let them limit the scope of the amendments that they're talking about? It just doesn't make any sense. So it was great to hear from some of the Texas grassroots. They did limit the number of folks they had to go and testify. And again, that in this scenario is a wise decision because they're confident they have the votes on committee. So why frustrate or annoy the committee members by taking up more of their time than is necessary? Our Texas team is massive. There's almost 250,000 petition signers in Texas for a convention of states, but the team wisely chose to limit their testimony. They did show up, they were there, and they have been contacting their legislators through email, phone calls, and every other way to show their support, but they didn't waste the time of the committee this morning. One other good thing that one of our volunteers pointed out, I believe it was the Texas legislative liaison, just pointed out that the 38 state ratification requirement is a massive protection on this Convention of States process. So anything anyone might be worried about a bad amendment coming out of the convention, that 38 state requirement for ratification is huge protection. Now, folks, I believe producer G has Jonathan Viad standing by. There's Jonathan. Jonathan, of course, is one of our regional directors, and he has the privilege and honor of being the regional director for our great Texas team. Jonathan, welcome, and just give us your reaction. What's your take on what happened in committee?
Well, thank you so much, Rita. Good morning. I think my initial reaction is, man, we are just so blessed to have some incredible grassroots activists and some incredible supporters in the Texas Senate. I think Senator Brian Hughes and Senator Brian Birdwell are two incredible supporters and champions of Convention of States. Obviously, Senator Birdwell has been our sponsor for a number of years, going back to when we first passed in 2017. And I thought they did a great job of kind of setting things up for us today, and then pushing back on some of the opponents that we have had. And of course, like you mentioned just a few moments ago, our team strategically chose not to have our team there kind of bog down the committee with our testimony. We're very confident in where we stand with those champions and others that are on the committee. So we had an opportunity to just make a couple of key points. We also had our friends from Texas Public Policy Foundation there to support us as well, and kind of just get back and allow things to go from there. And I think things went really well for our side. And in particular, I know you were mentioning a couple of quotes from our champion earlier, but Senator Birdwell's remarks, I believe that the states, reminding folks that the states created the federal government and the creation is never greater than the creator. I think that was such a key line there, and something that really kind of should hit home with a lot of people, that the states are the ones that are sovereign. They're the ones that are in charge. They created the federal government. And of course, it's within their right to go back and make modifications to that creation and reduce its scope, reduce its power. And that's exactly what Article V gives them the ability to do.
Yeah. Yeah, that was great. Loved all the testimony, Jonathan. I thought everyone, at least everyone on our side, did a great job, and it was a nice tight hearing. You know, they got the people through. I think the technical limit on time to testify was maybe 2 minutes. So it was tight, but our folks really respected it. They were concise. They made their points. They were very impactful. Let me ask you if you had any responses or favorite moments in the opposition testimony. Any surprises there?
I don't think so. It's kind of the same talking points that they put out there. The one I think that kind of bugs me a little bit is they're being deceptive when they talk about states that have rescinded Article 5 applications before in the past, and they say, oh, 10 states have done this. But let's be honest, okay, folks. None of the states that we have passed our resolution in have rescinded our Article 5 application. Yes, there are some states that have rescinded Article 5 applications, but those are many states that are Democrat-controlled states that have maybe wanted to withdraw some of them. And there are some older calls that maybe are no longer apropos to what we're trying to accomplish now as a nation, or just don't fit in with what we're trying to see done. So this idea that because states are just rescinding Article 5 applications, that means we should rescind all Article 5 applications is just ridiculous. And it also doesn't address how we then solve the problems that we see in our country. And if you can't present us with a clear vision for what we want to do in order to solve those problems, then how can you just sit there and throw stones at us when we're trying to offer a solution that's clearly in line with what the founders envisioned when they created the Constitution, which, as Representative Cody Vasut mentioned during the House committee hearing before the State Affairs there, if you love the Constitution so much, Article 5 is part of the Constitution. So why are you so afraid of us using the Constitution to save and preserve the Constitution? It doesn't make a lot of sense, and those kinds of things just drive me crazy. So I don't know if that would be my favorite moment. I don't know I'd use the word favorite, but just something that stood out to me.
Favorite opponent moment. Yeah, you make a great point, Jonathan. It did occur to me too when I was listening to the opponent testimony, the talk about rescission. Yeah, well, rescission of what? Because as you say, we've never had a COS application rescinded. All of ours are still standing out there. But the fact is, rescission is something a legislature can do in the future if it determines that it no longer desires or needs the sorts of amendments it was applying for in the past. And in fact, when some states do that, when they seek to rescind an Article 5 application the state passed maybe 100 years ago that they don't want anymore, we are supportive of states using that. That's part of the Article 5 process. They can change their mind down the road. But yeah, it was definitely misleading testimony by the opponent in that instance. Now, Jonathan, before I let you go, I want to ask you about what you expect to happen next. And I say that tentatively because legislatures surprise us all the time. But we do know that we have a House joint resolution pending on the House side. It's already had its committee hearing. What do you think is going to happen next process-wise? And we won't hold you to it.
Thank you, Rita. I appreciate that. You never know exactly how things are going to shape out. So the reason folks may be confused, why are we having a Senate hearing when we haven't had a House hearing, or we haven't had a House floor vote on our resolution? And these are companion bills, right? So SJR 54 is the companion to HJR 98. 98 is the one that has been moving for us on the House side. We hadn't seen movement yet on the Senate. And so we passed committee there in the House, and we were waiting and still are waiting for the Calendars Committee to put it on the calendar for our House floor vote. And things have been slowed down a little bit because there are other things going on in the legislature. We try to think that the most important thing is convention of states, because it is to us. But of course, the state still has to address their budget. And of course, the governor had some priorities, including school choice, which is another thing that we really support and is important. And those things kind of came up in the House and slowed us down. So we thought, well, why not get things moving on the Senate side? Let's create a little bit of a race here between the Senate and the House. And whichever resolution makes it through that chamber in first, we can then have it substituted for the companion bill in the other chamber. And so we're trying to move things forward there. I'm not entirely sure what the process is for the vote on the Senate State Affairs. I know that we have the votes there. I'm very confident that we will see it passed out of committee. I don't know how quickly we will see a vote on our resolution, though I hope it is done relatively quickly. So it goes back to the House where things there. We feel pretty confident that we could see a House floor vote as early as next week. We don't know for sure yet, but that is something that our team has been discussing with some of the legislators there. So we're hopeful that that will happen. And if we are successful, then we're back and focusing on HJR 98 and trying to get that through the Senate side once we get it through the House side. So still lots to go here, but we are feeling really, really good, in particular where we are in the process during the legislative calendar. So Texas legislative calendar ends in June. Usually they wait for resolutions towards the latter part of the legislative session. That's not what they've been doing with our resolution. They can see the groundswell of support that we have amongst the people of Texas. And so the legislature is responding to that and moving it forward. So I feel really good about addressing this and seeing it done pretty early on in May. That would be my hopeful prediction.
That sounds good to me. Well, let me just take a moment and congratulate and thank our Texas massive grassroots team. Y'all do an amazing job, and we are so proud of you. We love seeing these great results from the work that you're doing behind the scenes. You know, we just saw a few people testify this morning, but we know that there was a ton of work happening in the lead up to this that got us to where we are today. So really appreciate that Texas team. And Jonathan, last thing, if someone right now is watching from Texas and is not plugged into the Texas team yet, what can they do? What's the call to action?
Thank you for that, Rita. So first, let me just add to what you said about our Texas team. They do an amazing job, and I have to give a big shout out to our leadership team there, our Capitol Brigade, in particular, our legislative liaison, John Van Compernol, who you saw give testimony today. John sometimes leaves his house at 3 o'clock in the morning in order to be in Austin so that this way he can be there when legislators come in, have breakfast with them, and build relationships with them. He's just been doing an amazing job for us. I think he said, we were joking on our Texas call the other day. I said, John, how many times have you been to the Capitol so far this year? He said 40. I said, well, how many 40 days I've been there? I said, well, how many days in session are there? He said, oh, I think there are 90 days. I said, you mean to tell me you haven't been to the Capitol more times you've missed more days than you've made it to the Capitol? What's going on there? No, but John's just been doing an amazing job, and I really appreciate him. And then to your question about supporters who may not be connected, first, make sure if you haven't signed the petition, you need to go ahead and do that. But after you sign the petition, make sure you're opted into our emails or our text blasts. We're constantly sending out updates. We sent down an update just the other night when we learned about this committee hearing to ask people to show up and be at the Capitol. And make sure then you go to conventionofstates.com/act, sign up to become a volunteer activist. It's a low position in that not a lot of time is required, but you get connected. You're given some opportunities to learn from COS University and then possibly get involved with our team and showing up at the Capitol. We want our supporters there. We want you to reach out to your legislator. If you're not sure where your legislator stands, you could always give them a call and ask them, or you can reach out to our state team and we would be happy to let you know exactly where your legislator stands. There are some legislators where they still haven't made public appearance known. We've been utilizing Telepatriot to reach out to constituents and politely ask them to support Convention of States. We've been doing that on social media as well. That's another simple, easy thing that people can do. You can go to our social media accounts on Facebook and X, like some of the posts there, share them, comment on them. We're then taking that and sharing it with legislators so that this way they see the groundswell of support that we have across the nation. So some small things that you can do and you can make a huge impact on our movement there in Texas and beyond.
Absolutely. Folks, if you're watching and you've been sitting on the sidelines, today's the day. Join up and get involved. That's going to be a wrap for us today. Jonathan, thanks for joining us, and let's get back to work because we've got a country to save.
Amen. Thank you, Rita.